The Caribbean is that dream vacation that always seems reserved for the few who can afford to spend a lot. Turquoise waters, white sand beaches, luxury resorts, expensive poolside drinks, and a bill that often scares you away. But the Caribbean has less obvious paths, and that's where Belize comes in, a small country almost hidden on the map, but with everything that makes the Caribbean desirable. Crystal clear sea, almost untouched islands, Mayan ruins in the middle of the jungle, and a mix of peoples that creates a unique culture. And the most interesting thing, all this for a much lower price than the famous destinations. While Aruba, the Bahamas, and Barbados make your credit card cry, Belize delivers the same postcard-perfect scenery at costs that fit much more realistic budgets. Today, Bello Mundo will show you why Belize is becoming the Caribbean's best-kept secret. A place where you can fulfill your dream of a tropical vacation without having to sell a kidney to get there. In the end, you'll understand why so many people are trading the obvious destinations for this little gem hidden in Central America. Number 1. Location and geographical data. Belize is located on the Caribbean coast of Central America. It borders Mexico to the north and Guatemala to the west and south. On the east side, it is bathed by the calm, crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean Sea, which are exactly what we see in the photos. The country is small. It has only 8,800 square miles, which is about the same size as the state of New Jersey. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for in beauty. The coast is dotted with islets, the famous cais. There are more than 400 of them. Some are completely deserted, others have small villages, inns, and that authentic Caribbean vibe, far from the hustle and bustle of the larger islands. And it's not just beaches. As you head inland, the landscape changes. Dense forests take over, with wildlife scattered everywhere, jaguars, monkeys, anteaters, and more than 500 species of birds. In the middle of it all are the Maya Mountains, with peaks reaching nearly 1,000 meters in height. The current capital is Belmopan, built after a hurricane destroyed the old capital, Belize City, in 1961. Today, Belmopan is the seat of government, but the largest city remains Belize City, with just over 60,000 inhabitants. The climate is classic Caribbean, hot and humid all year round. Between November and April is the best time to visit, with dry weather. From June to October is the rainy season, and there is a risk of hurricanes. Oh, and since Belize is right in the middle of migratory routes, it is common to see whales, dolphins, and exotic birds passing through at various times of the year. Number 2. History. Before Belize existed, this was home to the Maya, one of the most fascinating civilizations in the Americas. They were here long before any European even dreamed of crossing the ocean. They built entire cities in the middle of the forest, with pyramids, temples, and astronomical observatories that are still impressive today. But over time, the Mayan Empire began to weaken. There were political crises, climate changes, agricultural problems, internal wars, and collapse came. When the Europeans arrived, much of it had already been abandoned and taken over by the jungle. From the 17th century onwards, a new struggle began, the Spanish on one side and the British on the other. The British prevailed and turned the territory into a veritable timber farm. They mainly exploited pau de tinta and mahogany, woods that were highly prized in Europe. This extraction became the driving force of the local economy for centuries. Thus was born British Honduras, the name the territory bore for almost 300 years under British rule. Independence only came in 1981, but Belize maintained some connections with the United Kingdom, such as the fact that English is still the official language, something very rare in Central America. But independence did not end all problems. Guatemala only officially recognized Belize as a country in 1991, 10 years after independence. However, even after recognizing the country, Guatemala continued to question the borders. They claimed that part of the territory should still belong to them. This impasse went on for decades, until in 2018 and 2019, the two countries held referendums and agreed to take the case to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The case is still ongoing, and the final decision on the border is expected between 2025 and 2026. In other words, Belize is new on the map of independence, but it has a heavy history behind it, with chapters that are still being written. Number 3. Population and languages. Today, Belize has just over 400,000 inhabitants. This may seem small, but this population is a mix of ethnicities and cultures that is difficult to find elsewhere in the region. Most Belizeans are mestizos, descendants of indigenous Mayans and European colonizers. In addition, there is a strong Creole presence, originating from the mixture of enslaved Africans and British colonists. There are also Garifuna communities, descendants of Africans and Caribbean indigenous peoples, who keep many of their own cultural traditions alive, especially in music and dance. The Maya are also still present, mainly in two local ethnic groups, the Mopan and the Kekchi. They continue to preserve many of the customs of their ancestors, such as traditional corn farming, the use of medicinal herbs, handicrafts, and some community celebrations that still retain traces of their ancestral culture. Another interesting group in Belize are the Mennonites. They arrived here from Canada and the United States in the 20th century, seeking religious freedom. To this day, they live in closed communities with their own rules, traditional clothing, and a lifestyle very different from the rest of the country. They produce much of the food that supplies Belize. And just to remind you, here on the channel we have a video just about the Mennonites, with details about their way of life, customs, and some curiosities that will leave you speechless. It's worth watching later. This mix of peoples is directly reflected in the language. Even though it is surrounded by Spanish-speaking neighbors, Belize's official language is English, a legacy of the British period. But in everyday life, Belizean Creole dominates informal conversations. It is a variation of English with African, Caribbean, and even Spanish influences, spoken quickly and full of local expressions. In several regions of the country, you can also hear Spanish, Mayan, Garifuna, and even German, due to the Mennonites. Number 4. Religion and traditions. Religion in Belize, like almost everything else in the country, is a mixture. According to the census, about 40% of the population is Catholic. The rest is divided between Protestant, Anglican, Baptist, and other Christian denominations. But the numbers don't tell the whole story. Here, religious beliefs go hand in hand with ancient traditions. Among the Maya, for example, many families still mix Christianity with pre-Columbian rituals. It is common to see ceremonies in which Catholic saints share space with ancestral deities, in a syncretism that spans centuries. The Garifuna have their own spiritual practices, which involve contact with their ancestors. One of the most important rituals is the Dugu, a long ceremony with dancing, singing, and offerings, performed to honor the dead and ask for protection. These traditions also appear in music. Punta is the typical rhythm of the Garifuna, with lots of dancing, percussion, and stories sung about everyday life, love, and cultural resistance. During festivals, punta competitions take over the streets and become a big party. Among the Maya, knowledge of medicinal plants is still passed down from generation to generation. Many turn to so-called bush doctors who use herbs and ancient rituals to treat illnesses, keeping alive a form of medicine that existed long before the arrival of Europeans. There is also 9 mornings, a very curious Christmas tradition. 9 days before Christmas, people wake up at dawn to sing, dance, and march through the streets to the sound of drums and maracas. It is a mixture of a religious festival and an off-season carnival. And in everyday life, Belize time makes everything even more characteristic. Here, no one is in a hurry. If you make an appointment for 2 in the afternoon, you can arrive at 3 and everything will be fine. The important thing is to enjoy the moment. After all, the tropical climate and Caribbean rhythm are not compatible with rushing around. Number 5. Gastronomy. Visitors to Belize quickly realize that the country's culture is also reflected in its cuisine. The cuisine here is a direct mix of the various peoples who helped form the country. The most traditional dish is rice and beans, but not the way we know it in Brazil. Here, the beans are cooked together with the rice in coconut milk, creating a very different flavor. It is usually accompanied by chicken stew, fresh fish, or seafood. For breakfast, many people become addicted to fry jacks in the first few days. These are fried bread rolls, served warm with butter, eggs, or refried beans. Simple and addictive. In the Garifuna regions, hudut is very typical. It is a fish stew with coconut milk and mashed plantains. In Mayan communities, tamales and tortillas made with traditional corn preparation techniques remain popular. With the sea right there, seafood is an important part of the diet. Lobster, shrimp, and fish appear all the time on menus, and unlike many Caribbean destinations, prices here are usually much more affordable. We'll talk about this in more detail and provide a direct comparison so you can understand the difference in prices. Oh, and since we're talking about lobster, we can't forget lobster season. From June to February, when lobster fishing is open, there are several food festivals throughout the country. Chefs compete to see who can prepare the most creative lobster dish, and tourists get to enjoy it all. When it comes to drinks, local rum is a must. The most famous beer is Belize, and for those who don't drink, there are always stalls selling fresh juices made with tropical fruits picked right there. There's also an interesting detail. Belize doesn't have any large international fast food chains. There's no McDonald's, Burger King, Starbucks, or KFC. The government limits the entry of these franchises. As a result, tourists end up eating at local restaurants, stalls, and markets, which not only helps them immerse themselves in the country's culture, but also boosts trade for local residents. Number 6. Must-see places and tourist attractions. Now that we know the country, the people, the culture, and of course the wonderful food, it's time to talk about what usually comes to mind when you think of the Caribbean, the postcard. And in this regard, Belize delivers in spades. The coastline here is simply spectacular. Belize has the second largest barrier reef in the world, second only to Australia. There are almost 300 kilometers of reefs with shallow, crystal-clear waters teeming with marine life. Colorful fish, turtles, stingrays, dolphins, and even reef sharks swim peacefully alongside divers and snorkelers. The big star is the famous blue hole, an almost perfect circle in the middle of the ocean, 300 meters in diameter and over 120 meters deep. It appeared after the roof of a cave collapsed thousands of years ago. Today it has become one of the most famous diving spots on the planet, and if you don't want to venture down there, you can take a plane ride over the area, which shows the surreal contrast of the dark blue in the middle of the turquoise sea. When we talk about islands, 2 always make the list of favorites. The first is Ambergris Caye. It has hotels, bars, restaurants, and that beach town vibe that still maintains its local charm. This is where San Pedro, the busiest town, is located. Even the transportation here reflects the relaxed atmosphere. Most people get around on golf carts through the narrow streets. The second is K. Kalker, much smaller and even quieter. The official motto of the place says it all: go slow. The streets are sandy, there are almost no cars, and the vibe here is basically to wake up, walk slowly, and enjoy the sea. But Belize isn't just beaches. Inland, there are Mayan ruins scattered throughout the jungle, showcasing the region's ancient history. In Caracol, for example, you can climb the Sky Palace, which is 43 meters high and offers an incredible view of the forest. There is also Zunantunich and Altunha, where the largest jade artifact of the Mayan culture was found. Another tour is Laymanai, one of the oldest Mayan cities in the region. The boat trip along the river alone is a trip in itself until you reach the ruins. In addition, there are caves such as Aktun Tunichil Muknal, with rock formations and artifacts from ancient rituals, and the Coxcomb Basin Sanctuary, which protects jaguars. In addition to felines, you can also see tapirs, monkeys, and lots of bird species. In short, Belize is on par with the major Caribbean destinations. It has nature, history, and that unique vibe that only this part of the map has managed to create. And if all that weren't enough, there's also the question of price. Number 7. The cheapest destination in the Caribbean. The great magic of Belize lies precisely here, when we put the price on the table and compare it with the most famous Caribbean destinations. While the Bahamas and Barbados have become synonymous with luxury and blown budgets, Belize still delivers the authentic Caribbean with postcard-perfect scenery, but at prices that fit most people's pockets. Let's start with accommodation. In this little paradise, if you're not into luxury, you can find well-located hostels, starting at $15 a night. Mid-range hotels with good comfort range from $55 to $75 a night. Now look at the contrast. In the Bahamas, a standard daily rate starts at $250 and can easily exceed $600, depending on the season and category. In Barbados, the price jumps even higher. All-inclusive resorts start at $280 per person per night. And the food? Here, Belize wins again. A simple street meal costs between $4 and $5. In mid-range restaurants, the cost is around $7 to $8. In the Bahamas, just a basic fast food meal costs $12, and a simple meal can easily exceed $22. In Barbados, lunch at a simple restaurant costs $20, and in mid-range restaurants, the price rises to $100 per meal. Now let's move on to the tours. In Belize, snorkeling on the barrier reef costs around $50, and diving in the blue hole costs around $400, which, incidentally, is one of the most expensive in the country. On other Caribbean islands, similar snorkeling tours can cost twice as much, and scuba diving easily exceeds $600 to $700 depending on the island. Even transportation within the country is cheaper. Local buses cover the whole of Belize for $2 or $3 each way, while in neighboring Caribbean countries, internal travel usually depends on taxis or private services, which cost no less than $30 to $50 per trip. In the end, while a week in Barbados or the Bahamas can easily cost between $3,000 and $5,000 per person, in Belize you can do the same for less than half that, including travel, accommodation, food, and tours. All in all, Belize offers the Caribbean look at a price that, compared to its neighbors, is almost a bargain. Number 8. Cost of living. So far, we've seen that Belize is a great option for a vacation. But what about those thinking about something bigger? Moving to this Caribbean paradise for good? The truth is that Belize has also become a destination for many people looking for quality of life in the Caribbean without having to spend a fortune like in other countries in the region. Starting with rent. A well-located one-bedroom apartment costs between $400 and $600 per month. Now compare that with its neighbors. In the Bahamas, the same type of apartment costs around $1,500. In Barbados, it is close to $1,200. In other words, living in Belize is 30 to 50% cheaper in rent alone. In terms of daily expenses, Belize continues to lead the way. Fixed bills for water, electricity, internet, and gas are around $150 per month. For food, a person spends around $300 per month, shopping at the local market and eating out occasionally. In the Bahamas and Barbados, these same bills easily double. Fixed expenses alone exceed $300. Another strong attraction of Belize is its tax policy. The country does not levy income tax on amounts received from abroad. In other words, those who work remotely for foreign companies or have international income do not pay local taxes on it. In other Caribbean islands, there are much stricter and more expensive requirements. And for those who want to work remotely, the internet in the main cities and islands is of good quality. This has been attracting many digital nomads looking for affordable costs, good weather, and, of course, the ease of speaking English on a daily basis. In short, living in Belize means having that postcard-perfect Caribbean look, warm weather all year round, a reasonable cost of living, and significant savings compared to its more famous neighbors. Now tell me in the comments what your favorite discovery was about this little Caribbean giant. If you enjoyed the video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. Because in the next destination, Bello Mundo will take you to another surprising corner of the planet. Until then,